why not? I mean, we've already done that part, so
Right.
yeah, that's what I did. Anyway,
How's it going, Dr. Lamb?
Good.
I just am.
Hello.
How's everybody?
Good.
Great. Everybody get on tonight without any problem? Don't need to send the link out or anything?
Well, I just went ahead and went to the Wednesday link because the
Yeah.
Tuesday when this
Same
list is
here.
still doesn't
Yeah,
work.
that's what I told everybody last week. If I try to go back and adjust it, it'll mess up both links, unfortunately.
No, okay.
It's
Yeah.
I tried the Tuesday just to check and see, and when it didn't, and hopped on the Wednesday.
it's gone dead for some reason, and I don't want to get into trying to do an autopsy as to why.
Too late. We only got this one and one more. So
But I mean, and I'll just tell you, I have had the absolute day from hell on technology. So we had candidates on campus today for faculty positions, and you have different roles and responsibilities according to whether you're on the interview committee. But even if you aren't on the committee, you're expected, if you're at a certain level of faculty, if you're a program coordinator or a chair or above, and I fortunately am, you're supposed to show up and they have to do a demonstration lesson for you. So about halfway there, I noticed an email came through from Gardner Webb, and one of them do not reply emails.
Yes.
I was like,
electricity out.
Yeah, the
power was out. So that was bad enough. And the lady was supposed to be on at 11:30, and she was in there, and we were like with big lighters, and she no power trying to do her lesson. All light we had in the room was from outside, and the light from her. She had enough battery on her laptop. And if that wasn't bad enough, when the power came back on mid-afternoon, I think I'm the only professor at Gardner Webb. I refused to let them replace my old desktop with another desktop. And I took 8 months, but I finally twisted enough arms. I got me a nice laptop from, for the campus if I have to grab one and run around. I have 4 myself, but y'all got to buy me one too. Well, it's got to be tied into I have to access all the secure databases. And so, but so anyway, when that thing came back on, it had an error message that it no longer recognized the power cord.
Cool.
And that I was going to have to go through the utilities and reboot and reset everything in the computer. And when I left at 5 o'clock, I had rebooted the 3rd time, and it would work for a while, and then it would just crash, boom.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know. When I get back tomorrow, I always carry one with me in my bag at all times. I have a spare at each home and one with me, and I've got a spare to my spare here. Because they wouldn't let me use it anymore, my road dog, because they said it was out of date for duo security. And I am not going to travel back and forth to campus to get in certain programs. I can keep something with me I can get in them. And so I'll take the laptop tomorrow, but I'm guessing, I don't know what happened, but it just fried everything. Everybody was having troubles, struggling, screaming. Nothing was working. I've had to start unplugging the internet so I can use Zoom at work. I have to use the internet off my phone. I don't know. We're in a tizzy over tech, but yeah, the power today, that did not help things that were up and running when it went on. And for whatever reason, I don't know if they had a surge or I don't know what happened, but boy, my laptop is not happy.
It's always interesting I've never been on campus at Gardner Webb, but we get all the notifications as if we are on campus. It's always fun. Like, I don't care, but okay, I'm sure that's bad for them.
But I've never worked anywhere that if the power goes out every day or two, the internet goes down every few minutes. There's always, they have, like high school, they have chicken day on Friday and they back up the sewers. It's just something all the time. And then we had the year, I think it was the year before COVID, where we got infested with vultures, buzzards.
Oh, wow.
Not making this up. I don't mean a couple. I mean by the hundreds. And then, of course, all the All the environmentalists were mad. They didn't want them to be hurt. And so they hired a company that came out and did sonic booms every hour. I'm not making this up. That they had a thing that would make a sonic boom that would break the sound barrier. And they left after about a week. They finally left after we were all shell shocked. They finally left. I've never been any place like this where it's just something all the time.
I think you should just went ahead and change the mascot. I mean,
The
not like it's
water,
overused
the
anyway.
water goes out every day, and it's brown all the time. We don't have any hot water in our building. I'm on the second floor, and we don't have a bathroom on our floor. We don't have any hot water. We can't keep water. We're in a really old building. We can't keep water. We can't keep power. We can't keep internet. You know, our AC is either on or off. It's cold in the winter and hot in the summer.
Quick question for you. Do you know this? Does North Carolina have a contract for internet provider for the whole state? Like all the districts have to use the same one?
Oh,
South Carolina did a few years ago.
Yeah.
Required us all to use AT&T, which goes down so often. It always goes down on, like, you know, state testing days and stuff like that.
Yeah.
When we've got everything set up and ready for that.
Yeah.
And it's like the state requires us to use AT&T, but it always goes out.
But
And
they can't make it. They can't require that it works.
Right, exactly.
And so, and then tangential to all this, my wife calls from the big house and says, I don't have any internet. And I'm 2.5 hours away. What would you like for me to do? Walk me through how to get, you know, how to attach my tablets to the phone. 45 minutes later, I finally got that done. 45 minutes. Got to attach her tablets to her phone, the hotspot on her phone.
You got to pull up a YouTube video and just send her the link to the YouTube video.
Well, but she didn't have internet. She couldn't pull it up.
She did on her phone, though. On her phone, she did.
Yeah, but I told her we're gonna get her one of them that's just got the big numbers for old people. You know, learn how to. I pay a fortune, a king's ransom, for you to have the latest cutting edge technology, and all you can do is play cards and get on Facebook on your phone. That's all you can do.
Dr. Lamb, you're gonna have to edit this video. You're gonna cut off this whole intro.
Yeah, my wife sees this. I'll have to live there permanently in a little house.
I'm just looking out for you and your marriage right now.
That's exactly right. Okay. But no, it's we have Spectrum, but I'm hoping to AT&T just abandoned us, and so I'm hoping to get Spectrum. I'm hoping to get rid of it and get the new AT&T fiber optic. They put them both in at the same time, but they haven't turned on the AT&T yet. But I've got Spectrum fiber optic, and I don't know. It goes down a lot in the afternoons during, I don't know if it's peak times or what it is, or solar flares or something, but it's always down. But we do have AT&T phones. I have to have an AT&T phone here but now AT&T, as soon as you cross the Flowering Bridge from Lake Lure to Chimney Rock, you're nothing, dead. And if you go back down 9, like going back to Gardner Webb, I need to wind my way back through Rutherford County, and my cell service is fine. But if I cut down the shortcut through Polk County down 9, as soon as I leave Rutherford County, they jam my signal till I get back in Rutherford County. It's about 35 minutes. And sometimes my phone won't come back for a day. But now I had Verizon, but Verizon doesn't work at all up here. As soon as you lose civilization, as soon as you make a right off the main road, there is no Verizon.
That's what I got to. That's the same thing for me.
You get off the main road with Verizon, you got nothing. So when I first moved here, when I sold the second big house in Forest City and moved to and downsized to this condo, I had Verizon. 30 minutes from here, the phone goes out, and you thought, well, it'll come back in a few minutes. And then somebody said, no, it won't ever come back. And so I had to get AT&T, but I have to be careful about which way I travel. And if I'm going up to town, I understand that if, the thing about when you drop a signal like that, it doesn't just come back automatically. And so I have to be careful. Sometimes I'll turn my phone off if I'm going to Chimney Rock, if I'm going that way out. But technology is a wonderful thing until it doesn't work. And then you realize how dependent you become on it. a lady today with her lesson. She said, I was thinking about bringing, she had some I don't know why they always think we have to have some activity when they do a lesson. We something on your phone. The one before her had a QR code and all that. Don't entertain me. I was doing this when you were still in short pants. I want to know what you know. Don't try to entertain me with little gadgets and phones. Boy, technology don't work. Well, today we found out. Stuttering and stammering along trying to read a PowerPoint in the dark. Goody. Y'all know your stuff. If you knew your stuff, you wouldn't need that PowerPoint. I guess her plan was to read her PowerPoint to us today. I don't. One day this week, just got pulled a PowerPoint up and read it. That was her lesson. I cannot make that up. She pulled up a PowerPoint and read it word by word, line by line. And that was her teaching lesson. And I thought, and then when I started grilling her, one of the other ladies in the room got mad. I said, you think doctoral students or master students would let you just pull up PowerPoints and read them to them? You don't think they wouldn't complain? My phone be ringing off the hook if it was one of my crowd. They'd chew my ear off, even if I didn't do it, because I bossed them, they'd wear me out. You can't pull up a PowerPoint and just read it. So I think I was kind of waiting. I think we got everybody that's coming tonight. I appreciate y'all coming. Here's the stars of the week. RJ from the other class made a great point, and that's what I was just talking about. See how I segue? Principals are judged on their teachers, the actions of their teachers. I'm judged on the actions of the adjuncts and the full-time that I employ as their program coordinator or department chair. And so everything that goes bad, I'm getting my ear chewed off. I was in Charlotte for class on Saturday. I had a line out the door from other programs waiting to complain, but wasn't even there for my class, just waiting to complain. About something that somebody hadn't done or had done in class. So it'll be the same way when you're a principal. You will be judged on the actions of your teachers. And so that's why I said those parents have the right to complain. Those doctoral students, they had the right to complain. They were not getting what they paid for. And when you're their supervisor, you're judged by their actions, and you have to be responsible for their actions. Danya kind of summarized it by saying that, principal's not the leader in that building because they're doing whatever they want to or don't want to. They've got no leadership. Got, some young fellow that has no teaching experience trying to be their facilitator. He's about as helpful as a screen door on a submarine, I suspect, because he doesn't know anything. That he could have the best intentions, but so there is no leadership in that building. But that was a great point. Larry made a good point. It circles back to the APTEL that needs to be said again. Principals have to build instructional capacity in their building. You're not going to get great teachers anymore. That's just not going to happen. For whatever reason, and I won't get into that. I won't digress into that. But his point was, how in the world do you expect to build student capacity if you don't build teacher capacity? Because the teachers are the ones that build the capacity in the students. And that's the whole notion. When you interview for an administrative job, you are a champion for students, but you work with adults. You build their capacity, and you get that you get that trampoline effect or that multiplier effect where the good that you do with them is then spread to 25 kids in their classroom. And so it isn't that you don't like working with kids. You can just have a bigger impact and better impact working with teachers if you build their instructional capacity. And he's exactly right. If you don't build teachers' capacity, you will not build kids' capacity. That's a very good one. Tremaine made a great point in his discussion board 15 this week. Diversity is inevitable. We can fight it, pretend that it's not there. Just like the nitwits that say, if we don't ever say the word racism, it'll go away. No, it won't. So we need to remember it's inevitable. Liz made a good point about protected speech in her summary, and also teachers doing supervision and beyond, like for second bus or whatever. Please remember, in their contract it says any other duties assigned by the principal. Now, I wouldn't have them doing a lot of instructional things beyond their time, but you could certainly justify supervision and student safety beyond their contracted time. Remember, teachers are not hourly employees, they're contract employees. There's no guarantee that they only have to work 7.5 or 8 hours a day. If you've got things going on late, then you need to have supervision there. And again, it's in their contract with any other assigned duties. So those were excellent points that they made this week. I want to make sure this group gets on your competency folio. You can request comments from me, get started putting your artifacts in. We've got a good many in the other group who've already done that. But we need to catch up on this group. Make sure you get your artifacts in. We only have 5 that haven't completed both the skip and the cap. And many, the skip and the OMA, and all of them are on task 4 or the final of the skip. So everybody's going to finish both evidences this semester. Yay, that's exactly right, Jasmine. And most everybody's already in the cap. We had a candidate, as I said, on campus today, and I was having a conversation with her late today, and we were talking about data collection, and I was pointing out, we have to work ahead in these evidences. You try to explain to these people, what the portfolio is. And she's a retired superintendent, working at an early college now up in Guilford, but she was a superintendent. She's come through the ranks, principal, and she knows. She said, that's exactly right. Said, there'll be no surveys or interviews after we start review for exams. And I said, that's exactly right. And so it doesn't matter that in the state blueprint, y'all don't start the cap to this summer. You're not going to get any data this summer. It's not going to happen. You're not going to get to do surveys and interviews this summer. You might have a week where you could get that done. More than likely, you're not going to have that. So make sure if you have to stop, but get on the first 2 tasks of that cap. Because a lot of districts have written policies that say you can't do any of that stuff. No data collection, no surveys, no interviews. Once the gong starts for final exam review, test review, EOG, EOC, SC Ready, or SLOs in Virginia. When review for those start, we're done for the year on that stuff. Then you might catch them late, but then you got to catch them before they leave for the summer. That's what we're talking about. Then you're jammed up against summer vacation. They want to get out the first minute that they're ready. They're trying to do their checkout list. So make sure you do that. So that's good. All right. So let me share my screen. Tonight we're gonna finish up talking about budgets tonight. And some of this will be review, as you know. Let's see what I want to start with. I want to start with this one. All right, this one under our weekly Zoom tonight. You say, Dale, why you got this one? School Business Administration. This is for central office people. I've included it. I won't cover it. It's 47 slides long. But if you want to know about budgeting at the central office level, some of you will go into the central office as coordinators or program managers or specialists. This is how it is done at that level. We have a course in this at the doctoral program. I actually teach it. I think I'm going to be teaching it this summer on central office budgeting. I just pulled the slide in from that class, but here it is, and it talks about that. And this is more about the vision of budgeting, which leads me to what I wanted to talk about tonight for us. Let me pull this up. There is a difference in budgeting and accounting. A lot of times when I post these 2 discussion boards, students will go and talk to the bookkeeper. The bookkeeper's not on the planning and budgeting end. She's on the purchasing and accounting end. Budgeting is setting the priorities on how you're going to spend your money. Accounting is how you spend it, the physical part of the purchase orders and the accounting of the funds. Budgeting is, what are we going to spend? How much money do we have? And what are we going to spend it on? Setting those priorities. And remember, what one document does the master schedule and the budget supposed to support in that triangle? That school improvement plan. That's what sets that budget. That's why we ask you first thing in task 1 of the OMA, what role does your school improvement team have in the budget? If they don't have any role, what is the likelihood that the budget is going to support those initiatives? You're just going to end up buying things, random stuff. Budgeting is about planning. It's about making decisions. Budgeting is not dividing the money out equally among all teachers or all departments, because that's not setting priorities. I love it when Dr. Renita Griffin Jordan's with me, and it's like she says, especially for a new principal, there's a lot of political cover and protection that the school improvement team gives you when they decide how we're going to spend our money, and not just a brand new principal. And you'll be in that, you'll be a brand new principal before you're a veteran principal. So that's good advice, is that if you do it the right way, not only do you support the initiatives of the school, the academic initiatives, but you also allay a lot of those personal slings and arrows you get from the teacher that wanted a new, wanted you to pave a new spot so they could have a parking place closer to the building with the money. I've actually had that. We want you to pave this spot over here so we can park closer. No, we're going to spend the money on the kids. It rains, it's muddy out there. I hate that. My car gets dirty. You're going to pay to have my, look, you can park in the parking lot with everybody else. That's too far to walk. I mean, as trivial and crazy as that sounds, that's real. Teachers will want stuff that just makes no sense, educational. And making sure that you go through your school improvement team to link up to your school improvement plan helps with a lot of that blowback that you get when you don't buy stuff for them. Now, what are the 5 most important steps in budgeting? That's debatable. The whole idea of having you ask that question is to see if your principal has 5 steps. As I always respond, the takeaway is it doesn't matter what they are, but do they have them? Do they have a process for how they go about setting a budget? Or is it just whoever hollers the loudest? I mean, that's the whole notion here. You must establish a process and follow it. That way you're protected on that one as well, that you're not playing favorites. And so that's the notion on that. All right, the other one for the week is locate a copy of your school budget. All right, so let's go to this PowerPoint. Now, this one is relevant. This is the one that I made years ago, or got years ago. I don't remember. I don't want to take credit for somebody else's work, for budgeting at the school level. So let's break it down and talk about this for a little bit. We've talked about it a lot this semester, in and out, but let's kind of summarize this in the end. All right. Remember, there are 4 distinct types of funds that you have at a school. All right. And here's the sources of that for the school. The first one is federal. Now, remember last week when I talked about you got to be really careful about spending federal money, because it won't, for the money for federal programs comes categorical and not block. What's the difference? Well, categorical says each individual thing that the money's got to be spent on. Block grant, here's $40,000. In categorical, here's $40,000, but 2's got to be spent on this, and 3 on this, and 1 on that. So you have to not, federal money is not just federal money. There's 4 different types. All right. General federal aid, that comes like the ESSER money. And there's been some other ones in my lifetime where we got some federal money that came as general federal aid because of what was going on in society. During COVID, we got general federal money, and it was called ESSER funds. Remember that? Some of you got employed by it. Some of you are still spending it. It's running out, but that's general federal. There is no formula on that. It just pops up all of a sudden. Now, when it pops up, there's a formula as to how much you get, but the federal government throws some money in every once in a while for different things, and that's what that is. And the other is flow through money. That's generally associated with grants. And let's talk about flow through money. Flow through means that it just comes through you, and it's designed. The feds said, this is what you're going to buy with it. You just account for it. That's what grant money is. You just do the accounting. And they put a limit on how much you can charge for the accounting. It's anywhere from 5 to 15%. Like if they buy a federal program and they're paying teachers, well, somebody has to cut their checks and do the payroll so that the district can take some money off the top, but the grant says how much they can take. But grants are a type of flow through money. And so understanding is you can take a little bit of that for administrative costs, but you're not the recipient. They're buying something, and you say, well, Dale, well, how's it? They get to decide what they buy with it. You don't. If they give you categorical aid, they've already said you need these teachers, we'll pay for them. When they give you a block grant, that you can spend it any way you want to. When you get flow through money, they've already set the program up, and they're just using you to pay for it, using the auspices of your finance department to pay for it. But you don't have any say so on what they pay or what they buy or how much they pay for it. It just flows through your district so that you'll have a point of contact to distribute the funds to pay for stuff or to pay salaries. But it's a federal program paid for by the feds, elected, designed, and you're just cutting the checks. So that's the kind of federal money that you get. And of course, you get your state income. You get this from the state. Now, where the state gets it from is property taxes, sales taxes, and income taxes. Obviously, the majority of the property tax comes from business, unless they've got some kind of one of those where they do an agreement with a business and they give them tax incentives where they don't have to pay their property tax. Now, when that happens, we just automatically subtract that much from schools because that's who's paying for it. When they gave Facebook here in the very bottom part of this county, right before you leave all the way south and east, right before you leave Rutherford County and go into Cleveland, that's about, let's see, 35, 40, that's 40 minutes from where I am in this part of the county, 45. Facebook built a server farm there next to the North Carolina data center. It was on the side of an old mill where they had their own power generation so they can generate their own power. You know, those server farms require an incredible amount of power, as much as a small town. And so it was right there on the Second Broad River. And so when the mill was there, they had their own power generation right there on the river. And so the mill went out of business years ago. And so the county bought the property, tore down the old mill, improved the property, and then gave it to Facebook. Cost them $20 million. And that was the incentive. And the North Carolina gave them a bunch of money to come in order to create jobs. Problem is the server farms don't create jobs. If you ever saw the show 2.5 Men, Eldridge and Jake got a job in what's his name, Walden server farm. There wasn't but 2 of them there. The rest are either custodial, maintenance, or security. So they got for $20 million county funds, which bankrupted them, and about $40 million state funds, they got 15 minimum wage jobs. Not a very good deal. But that 40 million came straight from the local county budget for schools, and the 60 came from the state budget for schools. So the schools paid, well, I said 40, it was 20 and 20 from the county. The site and the improvement was 20 and 20, and the state, they spent $100 million. So $100 million came out from the school kids so that Mark Zuckerberg could, put another billion in his bank account. So those tax deals for business development are never, ever any good. You can read the literature, but we still have a certain political party that against any sound judgment continues to believe that that's the way that we ought to be doing things in this country, is giving business incentives. All it does is damage even further public education, and you never get. I mean, we'd have been better off just give everybody $1,000. Much better off than spending $100 million to make rich people richer. Now that's not Dale's opinion. Again, you can read all types of studies that doing economic incentives don't work. It does not cost effective. But that's exactly where, when we do these either local incentives or state incentives, it comes straight out of the school budget. And so that's where state money comes from. Local money, again, property tax, sales tax. And if businesses aren't paying their property tax, boy, you really get hurt. Really. And this goes back to the Leandro case. When you're in a low wealth county, you don't have much business and the houses aren't worth much. How are you going to generate more income for your schools? And if you don't have a lot of retail where you have a lot of sales taxes, I mean, you think about it. Poor people don't have a lot of money to spend, but in a lot of these rural counties, there's not a lot of places to spend it. And so where I am in this part of Rutherford County, for those of you who have seen me live, I am a large man. If I want to buy a suit, there's not one place in Rutherford County I can buy a suit if I wanted to buy one. It's not much call. Not many people in Rutherford County wear suits anyway, but there's not one place in the county that I could buy a suit that's both big and tall. Not one. So if I wanted to shop, of course, I don't shop here, but if I wanted to shop here, I would have two options. I would either get in the vehicle and drive to Asheville, or Charlotte. I drive to Asheville one way, Charlotte or Spartanburg. There might be a big and tall shop in Hendersonville. I'm not sure. Or I would order online. And either way, the county doesn't get my sales tax. So that's part of it too. When there's not much retail in a county, that really hurts them on the sales tax deal. Really. Because you can make up for some property taxes if you can get some sales tax money. One of the things that, in the mountains and the coast and the vacation counties, they get such a large amount of tourism and sales tax and those occupancy taxes and those kinds of things. But outside of those two areas in our state, if your property isn't worth much and you're in a rural area that doesn't have a lot of retail, you're hosed when it comes to local money for your schools. That's how it works. And that was the heart of the Leandro case, is those poor districts were arguing, we're poor, we're never not going to be poor. Not in this funding formula. And how knowing how money comes to schools from the state, this is not a fixable problem. The only fixable problem is you adjust how much you spend based on the local wealth. That's the only way to equalize this problem for the kids. And as we know, that didn't happen. And then the last one, and then I'm not going to go into the rest of this, but I just want to make sure, but there's some really good slides in this one. Effective planning, it gives its steps for 5 that you ought to use, or the 3 or whatever. But then the last one, as you know, is fundraising, booster clubs and groups. That's still fundraising. Partnerships, foundations, grants. Now, I've told you the problem with grants is they always have in kind, IN space KIND. That means we give you this much, we expect you to spend this much in return, or give us this much in return. And that's one of the things that poor schools argue is, we can't be doing grantsmanship, because if to get $100,000 grant, we have to do something in kind for 20,000 or 50,000, or we have to provide, they'll give us the program, but we have to pay for the teacher. That kind of stuff. That's the problem with grants. There's always an in kind piece. Now, if you just get a block grant, that's a different story. But most grants, educational grants, have an in kind piece. Foundations. Rutherford County has a foundation. It is supported by the McNair Foundation. So I guess you would say they are kind of one and the same. The McNair Foundation was from Robert McNair. Does anybody know? He passed away somewhat recently. The owner of the Texas football team. What's the name of their team? The NFL team in Houston. What's the name of it?
The Texans.
Yeah.
Houston Texans.
Yeah. And so he owns that team. He did. His son does now. He passed away. But he's a Rutherford County native. He went to East Rutherford High School, graduated from there. He has set up an education foundation here in the county. They had a separate director, but they worked most closely with the superintendent of schools here. They were very involved. But as you could imagine, when he passed away, that involvement has waned greatly. And so foundations are good. However, sometimes they will have political bents. And you have to be cautious of that. Gardner-Webb used to be affiliated with the Anderson Foundation. And one of their stipulations is if we give you money, you can't take federal money. Well, the tipping point arrived about 5 years ago, I think, or 6, where they could get more in federal money than the grant, the foundation money. And so we dropped the Anderson Foundation and just went with federal money. But a lot of times foundations, they have stipulations like that. And so you have to be careful with them and know what they are. Partnerships, with other entities in your community. You have to be careful about that, because the people you didn't partner with will claim you're showing favoritism. They get mad. And then, of course, your booster clubs, again, you're responsible for whatever they do, whatever they, the fundraisers, the money they spend, those kinds of things. I inherited a booster club at the junior high in Charlotte that had bought new uniforms and didn't tell anybody. And we owed Bocock Stroud about $40,000. They decided they wanted to change the mascot and the colors and bought all new uniforms for the sports teams, $40,000 worth. But they didn't have any money in the bank. They just went out and did it. And I had to figure out a way to pay for it. And then fundraising. And we've talked enough about that. But those are the most specific in each of these. Again, there are so many rules, and I've got some of them here, but there's some good slides in this one. And it got some of these pointers and tips, and I've just hit the highlights. But you can read that. But you need to make sure, like this one right here, like this one. Players and resources, it talks about the individual ones like booster clubs. So it's a pretty good, it's a pretty good slide. Which, you need to really dig into this. But if you understand, if you hear my loud voice, money has strings attached. Better look into it, better know what it is, better understand what your responsibility is. If you apply for this grant and the money, can your district, will they let you support this, or will you be out fundraising every day to try to provide the in-kind portion to match what the grant people gave you? Or, got your booster club out raising money everywhere and it's gone, or they encumber funds that they don't have and you're responsible to pay them. I mean, Bocock Stroud didn't go to the head of the booster club when the bill was due for all the new uniforms. He came to me. He's not an expert in school budgeting or governance. All he knows is it said Eastway Junior High. He wanted his money. So, you know, I had to take the checkbook away from the Booster Club. That's the first thing I had to do. Well, that made him happy. I said, well, you don't have to give it up. Just write me a check for $40,000 and y'all can keep going. We don't have it. Well, then I'm taking your checkbook. You know, if I got to figure out, I mean, I can't, you know, this is not something that you keep spending and I keep paying. I'll pay this one, but there'll be no more spending. Yeah. The deal was, and I never understood that, when I became principal there, we were Eastway Junior High. We had 7 through 9. In 2 years, we were going to become a middle school. And they went ahead and said, we want to change our colors and mascots now. No, you got 2 years to be planning this, try to raise the money or do whatever. Oh, no, we just wanted to go ahead and do it now. We just get it over with. But you didn't have the money to get it over with. So now I've inherited all this stuff, you know, these new colors and all this stuff, and I've got no way to pay for it. What are we going to do? What do you mean we? That's not our responsibility. So, yeah, I had to take the Booster Club's checkbook and decertify all their officers. Either that or write me a check. Yeah, and it's amazing how quick they all just dry up then. But these are the things that you run into. So let's do a quick review. I'm keeping an eye on our time. Let's do a quick review of our budget laws and make sure that we understand the legalities behind all of these. These are, you know, we've talked more specifically tonight. Let's go back to the general laws and make sure we understand. You got to maintain a copy of your budget. You're going to get audited every spring. The budget is how you plan to spend it. The accounting piece is what you get audited. Now, some districts will take your budget and then they'll take your account sheets and make sure you spent the money on what you said you were going to spend the money on. The bigger districts will do that. Now, I told you I worked in 4 districts in my career, too big, too little. First one I was in was just a short period of time as a teacher, didn't know anything anyway. The other 3 I was an administrator in. And the 2 small ones, one of the small ones didn't do that what they call the reconciliation, looked at your budget and looked at your expenditures. The other small one did, and of course Charlotte did. Charlotte did the reconciliation every month to make sure that you were spending it on what you had it approved to be spent on. Burke County just did it yearly. Mecklenburg County did it every month. But you are to have that budget available. Now, you don't have to open your books on the expenditures. You have to give them a copy of the budget. This is what we're going to spend it on. That people can't come in and see your books, but they can come in and see what you said you were going to spend it on. And anybody, parents or any interested party, can come to the front desk and you're supposed to hand them a hard copy of your budget. You are a public institution. Please remember that state money and federal money comes to you installment. State money, $8,000 a year, basically, from the state per pupil, but they only pay for the ones that come every day. So at the end of every month, when they go to reimburse what you spent that month, they subtract your absenteeism. That's how school districts got in trouble during COVID. Their politics wouldn't let them close, but they didn't have any, you know, their attendance was so bad, but they were continuing to employ people, and, you know, and things just rolled on. They kept schools open. Beyond common sense, and got themselves in a hole. But remember, school districts have to have enough money on hand to run the first month of school, and then they get reimbursed that money, you know, at the end of each month. They don't give you the $8,000 up front. They give you 10 installments of $800 minus your absentee rate for the district per pupil. That makes us remember as well that charter schools, this notion that teachers have, well, that kid went over to charter school for the first month, they got all the money. Now we got all the burden. No, they got the money for that month. When he came back to you, now you get the money for him. The money doesn't go by a year. That's the biggest misconception teachers have. It comes in monthly installments. Okay. Tina, you got a question?
Yes. If you have a student that actually started off at school and then they end up going into like a home, not homebound, but home-based learning, where, let's say, discipline, instead of them putting them in alternative school, they place them in home-based learning.
All right.
Where do that fund go to? Or where does that, how do they replace that money? Where?
All right. Now I'm just going to have to guess on a couple things here. And I'm going to give you two scenarios. One is that district is spending its alternative school funds on that kid. When I was in Burke, that's what we did. We would put them on home-based learning, and instead of having an alternative school, we paid for teachers to go out and do basically homebound instruction with that kid.
Okay.
Now, later on, we opened a alternative school. I actually opened it when I was last year I was in Burke. I opened what was then known as College Street School in the old Morganton Junior High downtown. I opened it, staffed it, and ran it for a year before I left from the central office. And we stopped doing that home placement when we opened up an alternative school. But if you're using your alternative school funds, which comes from the state, it's an allotment based on your enrollment, that comes as a block grant for alternative schools.
Okay, so if the child is home based and they're using like a Canvas, because I know they said you can.
Yeah.
Do the child still need a teacher or no?
Yes, they have to have a teacher supervisor. They don't do direct instruction, but they pay a teacher to monitor his work and to grade his assignments. Yep. It's kind of like the role that we have here at Gardner Webb. They more than likely do, they're supposed to do online maybe once a week or something with them to check in on them, which doubles as a wellness check, by the way. And then the rest of the time, it's kind of like Canvas is the same as Blackboard. They do their work assignments just like y'all do. It's kind of like a college course. It's exactly what, but yes, they pay somebody to do that.
Okay.
Now, the other scenario, and this is not semantics, by the way. If he's placed home bound, B-O-U-N-D, that's now federal. That's now federal, and the feds are paying. They pay the same way. It's just who's paying. Again, they pay the teacher. They're using Canvas. The difference between a home placement, which is paid for by the state through alternative school funds, or homebound, which is a federal placement, which is paid through EC funds, but nobody. It works the same way, but it's who sends the money. For home placement and homebound is not local money. It's either state money or it's federal money. If it's state money, it's in lieu of an alternative placement because you don't have an alternative placement that fits that kid, or like in Burke County, they didn't have any at all the first 4 years that I was there. If it's federal, they've been placed homebound because they now have the designation, more than likely, of other health impaired. OHI. That's kind of a catch-all for those kinds of kids. And so we would just have to know the specifics, but it works exactly the same way.
Okay. And I asked because a parent advised me yesterday that her child is placed on home, and she kept saying homebound, but I know it had to been home base because that child should have been at a Turner school, which we have in a Turner school. They must be don't have the room to hold the kids that they need. But she was like, they don't have a teacher.
Well, that means he's got some kind of an IEP, and he probably is homebound. Then that would be what they would categorize that kid. If he has behavior learning objectives, he's probably OHI, and they don't have that EC teacher with that certification, and so they're probably doing homebound with him. That's exactly right. Now, when I opened up the one in Burke County, now it's been a day. Now, I was in charge of them eventually in Charlotte, but when I opened that one up, Small County, I could only afford one EC teacher, and I chose to get one that did LD. what we now call SLD, because the 95% of the kids that you would get in that would be SLD. But every once in a while, you would have one that was what they used to call them. They originally had called them Willie M's, but then they were called something else. The violent kids, ones like we're talking about, I didn't have one for them. So if they were those that were likely to hurt themselves or hurt others, we had to put them on homebound. But the good thing was they had a federal designation and the feds paid for it. So I wasn't about to pay for a teacher out of our funds, out of our state funds, for kids that the feds would pay for. So I hired a SLD teacher so that kids that were learning disabled could be sent to the alternative school, because unfortunately a majority, especially back in that time, a majority of the kids that would be whose behavior would lead them to go to an alternative school were SLD. Because if you'll remember back then, you were either severe and profound or LD. That's about only that. There was no autism back then. We hadn't got on that kick yet. There wasn't any autism. And so you were either mentally disabled or you were learning disabled. And alternative school is not appropriate for mentally disabled kids. We had a facility in the county there that they call it Maynard J. Iverson there in Morganton. It's out on the interstate. That wasn't what it was called when I was there. But I'll remember what it was called in a minute. But anyway, the mentally disabled kids could go to school over there, or they could go to Broughton. If they were violent and mentally disabled, they could go to Broughton, to the state hospital. They had a school there as well. And so, and the state paid for both of those. Oh, Western Carolina Center. It used to be called Western Carolina Center. Now it's Maynard J. Iverson. So if you had a violent kid who had a mental disability, they went to Iverson or Broughton. If you just had a violent kid, we would homebound them federal under OHI. And if you just had learning disabled, they could go to the alternative school. I mean, this stuff gets down in the weeds. Tina, you're exactly right. It gets down in the weeds in terms of what their placement is, what local resources you have available. Now in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, we had a number of alternative programs, different kinds, and we had two public separates, one for severe and profound and one for those violent kids of our own. But we were wealthy enough. We had Metro School and Morgan School, and we had alternative schools of different varieties, so that we could handle our own. But rural districts don't have that. And a lot of it is a negotiation between the county or the state. You know, who's gonna provide this? And as I said, in Morganton, the school district didn't provide them. The state provided a little school, and that little school broke my heart. I'm telling you, it broke my heart. You'd go by, if you knew how to cut through the campus of Broughton, the mental hospital, state mental hospital in Morganton, and you'd go by where the little school was over on the back. They had the nicest little kids playground with all the hobby horses, the little rubberized stuff, and it had razor wire fence all the way around it, because those kids were violent. At any one time, they'll have between 8 and 14 kids over there under the age of 12 who have committed murder. My wife, her partner going up the mountain to Appalachian when she did her 6-year degree in curriculum, was the director of their little school over there. It was heartbreaking. And so if you had one that was that violent, had committed a violent act, they'd go to Broughton. If they were just violent and hadn't killed or severely hurt anybody, they went to Western Carolina Center. If they were just learning disabled, they came to us eventually after I opened the school, because we didn't, we just had too many that were scattered all over, and we couldn't keep up with all these home place people. And so I was charged in the central office with founding and opening a alternative placement that could serve up through learning disabled for the district, and we did. Again, you get to Charlotte, you get to the wealth, you got everything that your district owns everything. You got all the stuff you need. Metro School, Morgan School, Right Choices. Gosh, we had 6 different alternative schools, 6 for different kinds of things, different age groups, different kinds of problems. We had Midwood. We had an alternate school. You ever heard of an alternate school? We had an alternate school for all of the kids who had the nose rings and the tattoos and all that would be harassed and bothered in a regular setting. We had an alternate school for them. And then we were dumb enough that we put the school for pregnant girls on the back side of that, and it made it even worse. We even had a school for pregnant girls. In Charlotte, we had so much money. If they were pregnant and couldn't maintain a normal schedule at one of the other high schools, we opened up Midwood High School just for pregnant girls so that they could just do part-time, had health care there for, to make sure if they had a problem with their pregnancy. But we had plenty of money in Charlotte. It's all about money, and somebody's got to pay for all this stuff. So there is no set pattern. It really has to do with the local wealth of the district in terms of what resources you can tap into. Again, modified accrual accounting system. Money has to be budget, requisition, purchase orders. The state reimburses what you spend every month. You have to have that accounting system, modified accrual basis accounting, not only for the district, you have to have it for the school as well. Daily deposits, individual schools, no money goes home at night, keeping no money in desk. You prefer teachers not to collect money. It's a really bad practice to let any parents collect money for anything. It's bad, teachers shouldn't be either if you can help it. You're going to get it audited every year. They're going to do at least once a year, they're going to do a reconciliation between your budget and your actual account sheet. Did you spend the money as was approved to be spent or not? Bigger districts will do it more often. CMS does it monthly. Depositing money, special funds, safeguard, principals responsible for safekeeping of the buildings, not let them get torn up because the local has to pay for it. Remember, capital is the local county commissioner's responsibility. Remember, school boards are unempowered. When they form a budget every year, they have to go hat in hand to the county commissioners to get it funded. That they cannot levy taxes. School board does not levy taxes. They can't fund their own budget. They have to get money from the county commissioners, understanding that the county commissioners are responsible for the facilities. So that means that they have to keep the schools up, the buildings and the technology, but they're also responsible for all county buildings and any community colleges that they have. That's why they're a competing interest for this tax money. It's not just schools that get it. All the county facilities, all their buildings, police, fire, city hall, jail, all that stuff is lumped in there with schools because those facilities belong to the county. County maintenance yard, work yard, recycling. If you've got these convenience centers, if you've got a landfill, all that comes out of the same budget as schools because that's all capital. And the more of that stuff you have, the less money there is for schools. You have a community college or a community college satellite, and you'll have one or the other, or if you're like Mecklenburg County, you'll have 5 separate community college campuses. County commissioners have to keep all that up in addition to schools. And so you have to be real careful. My story, and I'm watching our time, I'll be real quick. And I hadn't mentioned this one before, but you are responsible for your facilities and grounds. You know that. You are not a decision maker on who can use those in off school hours, like a church on Sunday, a softball league, a flag football league. You have to go through community use of schools, and somebody else has to approve that. So you can't let people use your facilities because they're using power, water, wearing them out, tearing them up. But the bigger issue is personal safety liability. So I will circle back to that story on personal liability. See right here. No liability shall attach to the Board of Education. So they make those groups apply, and they have to indemnify themselves and have insurance and do all that, so that it won't come back on the school board if somebody gets hurt or injured. Buildings is again goes back to the local boards who get their money from county commissioners. Now right here, this is the charter school. This is where charter schools get their stuff from public schools right here in terms of capital. Shall be the duty of local boards to provide classroom facilities, period. There should be a period there. So when a charter school gets approved to start, let's say in Mecklenburg County, like Lake Norman Charter did, and like Lake Lure Classical did right up the road here where I am tonight, they both started out in old disused mobile units. When they built Hopewell High School in the northern part of Mecklenburg County, they took all the trailer city, the 80 trailers from North Meck. They had more kids in trailers than they did in the building. They had over 3,000 kids, and they took those trailers and they gave them to Lake Norman Charter School, because charter schools are public schools. Now, all the local district has to provide for them is classrooms. You see it right there, classroom facilities. They just gave them trailers, said here. And that's how a lot of charter schools start. The one here at Lake Lure Classical Academy got some old disused mobiles from the Central High School, and that's how it got started. They have their own facility now, but that's how it got started. And that's, people say, you know, charter schools just started from nothing. No, they didn't have a lot. They might have had just a bunch of old mobile units, but they did get that from taxpayers. It did come from the county and from the district. Adequate school building, see right here, it's the duty of the local board of education to make provisions for public school terms by providing adequate school buildings. And remember, since school boards can't levy taxes, it falls on the county commissioners who do have that. And then you have your local policies here, which mirror the state policy, but most specifically what I like about them, it says you have to follow the same accounting procedures as the district and the state. But right here, it usually has some things about fundraising in it, the rules about them, and about reconciliation. Like if you have a ball game, you're supposed to sell tickets and count them and make sure the count is right and all that. And right here, use of funds raised, benefit school programs. You can't use employees during school time. Can't let them be selling or running private businesses out of school. You can't tutor your own kids for compensation, because that's buying grades. Right here, and if you got somebody like a real estate agent, you know, that works in your school and does real estate on the side, they can't do that. I always get a question about, what about these like Mary Kay Cosmetics or Maybelline? Or nope, you're not supposed to they're not supposed to bring their kids stuff from fundraisers from other schools. They're not supposed to do things where they've got, you know, selling Tupperware on the side or Amway or something. No, they're not supposed to do that. All right, I will close tonight with one of the more tragic stories of my 45-year education career. I was principal at Olympic High School, and the central office sent me a young man. His name was Jerry Winklejohn. I won't ever forget it. He was a young man from Florida. He'd been teaching in the district. He was an assistant principal at, I think, at Coolwood at the middle school. And they sent him to me. Now you say, well, why would they send him to you? You're a bad example for everybody. Well, yeah, I am. But I'm also was one of the 2 people in Charlotte, Mecklenburg that got through the year-long Gallup training to be a principal perceiver. That's the first level interview. We talked about that the other night. They do the Gallup Strength Finder Dispositional. Well, we used to use Gallup. Everybody used them. It's been a long time, but everybody used them. Gallup, the survey company, they put together this program to teach you to be able to perceive, and it was with the Haberman Institute out of Minneapolis, how to be able to interview an assistant principal and tell which ones would be great principals. And so I did that for a long time in Charlotte. I got through the training. It was very intensive. It lasted a year. And so they would send me these assistant principals and say, you know, put them through the Gallup and tell us, you know, if they're ready to be a principal or not. And so they sent me Jerry Winklejohn, and I thought, we'll see how it goes. And so he came in, he's a fabulous young man. Just very nice. On the ball, heart in the right place, champion for kids. He checked all the boxes. So now my job is just to look at his dispositional behaviors. I have no notion of his background or training. I'm not supposed to know, because that would influence my decision when I rate him off all these dimensions. There are 60 dimensions, 5 sections of 12 questions in Gallup. And I have to rate him on all of these dimensions, and I'm not supposed to know anything about them. I don't get a transcript. I don't get a resume. I get nothing. I'm supposed to just base my decision on their dispositional responses to the 60 questions that I asked them. What I didn't know is he didn't have much of a preparation program in Florida. And he wasn't well versed in school law. He'd worked in a small district where, you know, catch as catch can. Everybody knew everybody. So I said, you know, he's a winner, put him in. So he became principal at Ransom Middle School. That's right up at the northern county city limit of Charlotte, heading up 77 towards Statesville, Lake Norman, where I live. Look, Sunset Road is the last exit there, last Charlotte exit, and then you get to Huntersville, and Ransom's right there. And so he went over there. Good young man, was doing a fantastic job as principal. Everything's going well, but he didn't really understand the rule about community use of facilities. He just didn't know that. And so there was a flag football league that wanted to use their ball field on Saturdays, have these adult flag football league. And he did, and he watched them playing, and he really looked like they were having a good time. So he got where he was playing with them. He joined the league, Jerry. And as I said, he was kind of a lanky, thin fellow. He wasn't real tall, maybe 6 foot tall, kind of lanky and thin. He looked like a wide receiver. He looked like Jerry Rice. And he dove for a pass, and he landed on his neck and broke it. Quadriplegic. Paralyzed from the chin down the rest of his life. What's the problem with that? He wasn't vested in North Carolina. He'd come out of Florida and only worked in the district for a couple of years, didn't have his 5 years to be vested in the system. No retirement, no contract, by the way, with the district, no indemnification, no insurance.
Did he still qualify for workers' comp?
Yeah. But you know, in North Carolina, that there's a limit on long-term disability of $2,500 a month. There actually is no long-term disability in North Carolina. It's short-term. And if you're going to make it long-term, you have to go to the doctor every month for them to sign your paper. Every month you have to go. And then, but then the limit is $2,500 in North Carolina.
Regardless of your pay?
Regardless of your pay, the limit in North Carolina is 20. I speak from experience, folks. $2,500 a month is all the disability that you can get. He couldn't get any workman's comp because he wasn't at work. They had no community. If he'd had a contract, he could have claimed I was supervising them, but they didn't. They were just using the facility. No workman's comp, not vested in the retirement system, limit absolute of $2,500 on your compensation every month. That was less than half of his monthly salary with all those medical bills. No workman's comp to pick up on those. You know, back in the day, Blue Cross Blue Shield was 80-20 back then, rather than 70-30 as it is now. But it was 80-20, but still 20% of millions of dollars is a lot of money with no workman's comp to pick it up. Oh, don't. I'll stop at that. It got worse. Trust me, it got worse. But suffice it to say, you know, kind of rounding up for the semester here is you got to know what you don't know. That's why you got to ask somebody. What Snoop say? You got to ask somebody. And that's what you have to do. I mean, laws on money and things like liability. There's a reason why there's a community use of school policy. It protects the school district. If he'd have known that he should have done that, you know, it might have helped him in his situation. If it had been somebody else, somebody would have had, but this group didn't have any insurance either. They were just a bunch of guys. It's truly a tragic story. He died a horrible death. Later on, not that much later, he died a horrible death. But not before it ruined him and his family financially. That was the bad part. But you got to know the rules. You got to know the laws. You got to understand liability. You got to know what you spend money on. You got to understand the local is responsible for the buildings and grounds. And so they will take no liability or responsibility. They indemnify everybody that wants to use their facility so that they can't be sued and that somebody else has to have the insurance. They can't afford it. They're not the state. It's the local, and they're so strapped because they got to pay for city, county government and community colleges along with schools. You know, you got to be so careful with those facilities. You got to keep them up, keep them operational, keep them safe. And make sure that, you know, one of you pointed out that, you know, you keep them safe so there won't be a lot of workman's comp claims or suits to the district. I mean, school districts are building poor in North Carolina. We got way too many community colleges. We got 140 facilities in the state. We need about 20. We got 140 that counties are trying to keep up in addition to public schools. It can't be done in the modern era. There's just not enough money being generated. We don't tax wealth. We just tax property. And most of these companies are not housed even, and we give them tax breaks to come, like Facebook, and their parent companies are not housed in our state, so we can't get any, can't get taxes out of them. And the poor get poorer. But it's your responsibility to know the negligence laws, the liability laws, the financial laws, and understand who's paying for what and what you can pay for, so that you don't get caught in a situation where you've misspent money. You've given access to people to use facilities that create a liability situation for your school district, not the state, your school district and your facilities. You've got to protect the shield, as we used to say in Charlotte, Mecklenburg all the time. You've got to protect us in the district so that we can spend our money on children. You got to protect us and protect yourself. All right, next week will be a wrap-up week. We'll talk about sexual harassment. It's become how do you say this and not be offensive? It's become the one of the big ticket items in our industry now. Everything's about Title IX sexual harassment. I'm not complaining about that. I'm just saying we've got to pull that out and talk about that separately. It's become so powerful and so prevalent now. There was a time when I just mentioned it in one of the other modules and went on about my business. Not anymore. It's the majority of complaints that we have in our business today that are behavior related, either parents, kids, or faculty, and their interaction is either sexual harassment, sexual offense, or Title IX. By far. It's way above everything else in terms of the number of complaints that come across your desk as a principal about personal behaviors. I'm not talking about school discipline, about personal behaviors. It's the sexual harassment, sexual offense, Title IX stuff. And so we've pulled it out separately, and we'll do a wrap up next week. All right. What's on y'all's minds tonight? What have I missed? What do we need to talk about? I'm very proud of you. Only 5 haven't completed the skip, and they're all in the last leg of that. Our goal was to be 100% in both of those. No man left behind, no woman left behind. Everybody's gonna make it. I know it. If I have to, I told you, if I have to carry you under each arm, I can carry 2 at a time. I'm a big fella. I can carry 2 at a time. We're going to make it though. We are going to make it. And many of you have a great head start on the summer. You are going to finish on time this summer and you're going to get a job for fall. That's our job, is to get you through this and get you a job. If you're ready for one or want one, is to get you there. This is for aspirational people. We don't do this for the good of the group. We don't teach these classes just for general knowledge, good to know stuff. This is, we're going to get you a job. And you're going to be prepared when you get that job. And you're going to be great in that job. And you're going to be a champion for students. That's the whole notion of what we do here. We don't do anything just because it sounds good. We have a purpose. We have a goal here.
I do have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Last semester, when we were putting our evidences in for on task stream and our folios, we were told, to do some, and you told us this semester to do some of the open-ended ones if we could.
Yeah.
And get those done. I did some, but they weren't checked. Will they go back and look at them now, or will I have to like reassign comments?
No, you don't have to. Just put them in there.
Okay.
Just put them in there. No, when we go in, I'll do a final assessment. I do all the final assessments on folio. I just look at all 3 of them when I go in. If they're there, everything's good. Don't worry about that.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
I assess all. I'm the one that recommends you for a license and 90% of the time for a job. And I do all your dispositional assessments. I do all your competency analysis. I go in and check those. I do your folio. I do your log.
Okay.
And then I'm the one that recommends you for the licensure. I fill out the paperwork if it's South Carolina. I do the virtual form if it's North Carolina or Virginia. I write your letters. I fill out those forms that come electronically to me. I do a couple of those every day. I talk to people on the telephone about you. My job is to get you a job. And so I will assess your folio at the end, so don't worry about that. I can kind of figure it out. As long as there's 3 there and they look good to me. I tell you what, it's a personal thing. I love the pictures. I like to see your pictures. I really do. I like to see your pictures. That's my favorite thing, is when I open up artifacts and see you at work. I don't know. It just warms my heart for some reason. And you know how hard my heart is. So it really does. It warms my heart when I open. That's why you heard me say, take pictures with your cell phone. I like to see the ones with you in it. That's just a personal thing to me. I love those. But you know what? Prospective employers love to see that as well. They love to see you in action. They love to see you in that. Even if it's just a still of you standing there pointing at a smart board. They love to see that. Because administration is an out front role. I mean, it's not an ego thing. Look at me, but you got to be front and center. And if they see those pictures, they know that you're comfortable with doing that. Or if you're not comfortable, that you're willing to do it. It's kind of like that last case study that we had. The principal hid in the office all the time, didn't want to be, I wondered a lot. I've often wondered, it's a theoretical case. I've often wondered if, did she have social anxiety maybe? But she was, even when parents came and demanded, she still wouldn't go to the rooms. And you can't have people that are shrinking violets in this business. You got to be out front and visible. You got to lead. You can't lead from your office. And those pictures of you standing in front of your PLC or presenting to your administrative team, that's we like to see that. That tells us a lot about you. The documents are great because that's part of artifacts. Did you make this document? You got to have your stuff. It's a byproduct of the work that you do. So we love to see that, but we love to see a few pictures sprinkled in, especially on the open end. Like leading the parent group or working with them. We love to see that, but they're all good. They're all good. And I will open every one of them and read every one of them. How sad is my life that I have time to do all that? But I'm telling you, I live my life through y'all. I live my life through y'all. And I enjoy that. That's fine with me. Your success is my success. I enjoy it. I enjoy seeing the work that you do. I love to read what you write, see your pictures. I'm living. I've already had my time. I'm extending my time living through y'all. I'm I'm coasting, but I'm letting y'all pull my wagon at this point in my life. But I really enjoy what you do and seeing what you do. And I appreciate people who want to do this and who are aspirational and ambitious and who want to do good things for schools. That's what we need, is people who are committed and want to do good things for schools. That's what we need. This is not looky-loos. I was talking to that candidate today, and I said, I just did a study. One of my doctorals is principal in McDowell County, which is the next county up, and it was about work-life balance. And I said, in my era, I would have never thought about doing a principal dissertation on principles, work-life balance. That wasn't a thing when I came along. There's no such thing as work-life. What do you mean? We stay till we get the job done. Then we go home and sleep. We come back and do it some more. What do you mean work-life balance? That's the antithesis of school administration. We stay till we get the job done, and we work hard at working hard so that we get better at doing it. Yes, we want to go spend some time with our families, but our driving motivator is not how can I spend less time and have less of an impact. We don't really want to spend more time, but we're trying to be impactful. That's our whole notion. So this notion that work-life balance, that we calculate how much time we spend, not the quality of what we spend, is antithesis to me. No, I don't want you to stay 20 hours a day, but I want you to be intentional about the value add while you're there, rather than just counting the time. And so that's why I said, when I did my dissertation 36 years ago, God, 37 years ago. How long ago is 1987? Is that 37 years ago? If I'd have said I want to do work-life balance for principals, the faculty, that old bunch of geezers at Chapel Hill, would have laughed me out of the building. They would have absolutely laughed me out of the building. First of all, nobody back then had ever heard of work-life balance, but that the notion that you weren't a school person that was committed was just unheard of. It just wasn't a thing. It is now. And so if we get better at our craft, we can spend less time and still have the same impact. I don't want you to spend all your time, but I want you to be cognizant of being efficient, being effective, adding value the time that you are there. We've got enough average administrators. Kids need for you to be great. All right, I'm off my soapbox. I better go grade some work tonight. Appreciate you being with me. I will see you next week for the last go round.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Thank you.